Wave management is the most important concept to learn in all of League of Legends if you want to reach Diamond, but it's also the most complex, so naturally about 5,000 different channels have made videos on it to milk it for as many views as possible, which I am definitely not doing in this video by the way. I would never do such a horrible, despicable thing. But yeah, remember to smash that like button. Despite how many videos have been made about the topic, they all either throw too much information at you, making the video impossible to follow, or they don't really tell you enough. I remember when I was first trying to learn wave management 2 seasons ago, I had to watch at least 10 different videos before it all started making sense in my head, which is something I really don't want anyone else to go through, so here I am making this video. The process of mastering wave management can be broken down into 2 steps. Firstly, you need to learn how to do it, then you need to learn when to do it, which is kind of the same as how fapping works now that I think about it. So as such, this video will have 2 segments. The first segment will be the theory side of things, in other words the how, and the second segment will be about the application of the theory, or in other words the when. In general, I've noticed that most gold players and some plat players have the theory completely down, but suck at applying that theory, while the silver players are shaky on the theory and don't even think about applying it at all. Take that with a grain of salt though, because I personally didn't even know what wave management was until I hit plat, but sometimes I'll be watching my bronze friends play and it feels like they're laning against literally doper. My point is, even people within the same ranks are at a different level with wave management, so think carefully about which parts of the video you might want to watch before you get into it. So let's start with the how, which is actually quite simple when you break it down. To be able to manage waves, you need to be able to do 2 things. Firstly, you must be able to understand wave states, and secondly, you need to be able to execute the wave management techniques. Being able to understand wave states means you have the ability to look at a wave and know immediately what it will do if it remains untouched. In other words, is the wave going to push into you, stay where it is, or push into the enemy? On your journey to mastering wave management, this is the first thing you need to understand. To tell what a wave might do, you need to look at 2 things: its strength and its position. A wave's strength is a combination of the number of minions there are and their HP values. If one wave has more minions than another, or its minions have more overall HP, that means it has more strength, and the wave with more strength will be the one that pushes. For example, in this picture, the blue wave has more strength since there are more minions, so it will push into the red side. And in this picture, the blue wave is more healthy, so again it has more strength and it will push into red. So far this sounds quite simple, right? But what about if you mix them up? Like here, the blue wave has more health, but the red wave has more minions. So how do you work out which way it will push? Well, the truth is, you can't. There's no real way to work out what the wave will do. The only thing you can do is rely on your feeling. Sadly, this feeling isn't really something I can teach you, since it only comes with experience. But as long as you keep trying to guess what the waves will do in your games, you'll build up that feeling really quickly. The reason I'm mentioning this is because there are so many players that will just play League of Legends with their brain completely off, and thousands of games later they still won't have developed this feeling at all, when it should be something that you can perfect in a maximum of 200 games. If you don't have the feeling yet, watch the rest of the video assuming you do. Then when you're in a situation where you need to judge the state of the wave, give it your best guess. You only stand to learn from it if you mess it up and get it wrong. God damn, as I'm saying this, I'm having the realization that I need to stop feeling all these wave states and start feeling some grass. Why am I such a nerd? The other part of understanding wave states, as I said before, is its position. This one is pretty simple to explain. If a wave is closer to one side of the lane, it will eventually push the other way. For example, in this picture, the wave is pretty much even, but it's closer to red tower. This means it will eventually push back into blue. This happens because when the next wave arrives, the red wave will make it to where the minion clash is happening first, since it has less distance to travel, and obviously the side that gets reinforcements first will end up winning the fight. The only time where this isn't the case is when the lane is frozen, which I'll talk about more in a minute. So now that you understand the wave states, that's the first part of the how. The second part is learning the wave management techniques. The 3 techniques are fast pushing, slow pushing, and freezing. Fast pushing is shoving a wave as quickly as you possibly can to crash it into tower as fast as possible. Slow pushing is pushing a wave slowly, yeah, crazy right, so you can wait for multiple waves to arrive before crashing it. Usually this is done by only last hitting the minions, but you can increase the speed of the push slightly if you want. In the example on screen, you can see that I started pushing the first wave, and because I was pushing it slowly by only last hitting, the second wave arrives. Then I transition into a fast push to crash both waves at once. And finally there's the freeze, where you keep the wave just in front of the tower like this. For the red wave to stay frozen here, it needs to be the same strength as the blue wave with an additional 4 caster minions. Sometimes in top lane and bot lane you can do it with an extra 3 caster minions, but it varies. I'm not going to explain how to do this just yet since it will be in the application part of the video and it's easier using examples, so don't worry about it for now. And boom. That's everything you need to know about wave management, but just because you know everything doesn't mean you're suddenly going to be good at it. Learning the theory is one thing, but applying it in game is a completely different beast, which is what I'll be showing you how to do next. So what I'm going to be doing is showing you examples from 2 different games I played last week, where I used wave management to build huge advantages. In game 1 I'll show you how to make decisions based on the wave state and how to use pushes, and in game 2 I'll show you how to freeze. So as I said before, the first game is going to be about pushes, meaning slow pushes and fast pushes. So how do you know when to push, and how do you work out which push to go with? To work out when you want to push, you need to consider the benefits of crashing a wave into tower. Crashing a wave into tower gives you complete control of the lane and pretty much allows you to do anything you want, but it puts you in danger of ganks and all-ins. The bigger the wave you crash into tower, the more time you get to make moves on the map or do whatever it is you want to do. You can go ward, roam, recall, dive your enemy or poke them under tower, move to an objective, or anything else you can think of. So if you want to do any of those things and you're confident that you can avoid any ganks and win any all-ins, then you want to push. If you don't really need to do any of those things, then there's no point pushing. So now that you know you want to push, how do you work out which style of push to go with? A push has 2 parts to it: the time spent pushing the wave and the time the wave spends under tower. When you think about what happens during these 2 parts, it's pretty easy to work out whether you want to start a slow push or a fast push. In the second part of a slow push, a much bigger wave is crashed into tower than with the fast push, so you get way more time to make moves on the map. But the first part also takes longer, so if you need to make a move on the map quickly, then a slow push isn't going to be ideal. It's pretty much a question of time. You obviously want to crash a bigger wave into tower since it gives you much more time, so if you have enough time to start up a slow push and finish it, then that's what you want to go for. If you don't have time, like say in a situation where you need to roam to a fight quickly or get a recall off, then a fast push is what you want to go for. Let me show you an in-game example to give you a better idea. In this game I'm playing Orianna versus Qiyana, and my goal is to poke her as much as possible in the early levels while I'm stronger than her. If you remember what I said before, one of the advantages of crashing a wave into tower is that you can poke your opponent under tower while they farm it. So what you'll see me do in the early levels here is start a slow push. That way, I'll crash a massive wave into tower and have loads of time to poke her down as she tries to farm it. Also, since I'm only using autos to slow push the wave here, I can save my abilities for poking her. So you'll see me try and go for poke a lot during the lane while I'm doing the slow push as well. I decided to speed this part up because not really much is happening. All I'm really doing is last hitting the minions and trying to poke her with my Q. So don't worry, you aren't missing anything. And so now I'm nearing the end of the slow push and I'm about to crash a massive wave into tower. As I was explaining before, my goal is just to poke her, so whenever she goes for a minion, you'll see me just try and use my Q on her. Like that. I could also go and look for a ward here, but I choose not to because I'd rather spend my time poking her, and I only have a limited time while this wave is under tower. Now at this point I decide to go and ward because I can't really poke her anymore, so I go and place a ward and I see the Xin. And now the wave is pushing back into me. And the Qiyana, for some reason, decides to go for a fight. So you'll see I kind of wipe her out in this fight because I poked her so much. So there isn't really much to talk about in regards to that fight, but I wanted to make a point about the next decision I make. Normally after getting a kill in lane, what you would do is push the wave so that you can crash it into tower to create a timer to reset. But in this case, because I can evaluate wave states, I noticed that the enemy red wave is much bigger than my wave, meaning it's slow pushing into me. Normally you wouldn't take a reset when the enemy wave is slow pushing because the enemy will simply crash it into tower and you'll miss loads of minions. But in this case the enemy is dead, so the wave will continue slow pushing until I eventually get back to lane, so I can back here and I won't end up missing anything. And as you can see that's exactly what happens, and I get back to lane and the wave still hasn't crashed, so I pretty much end up missing like no minions. The takeaway so far is that I started a slow push at the beginning of the game because I wasn't afraid of any ganks from the Xin, nor was I afraid of the all-ins from Qiyana. I then used the crash to poke her under tower. It's important that you don't think of this as, he wanted to poke Qiyana so he started a slow push. What you should be thinking is he started a slow push because no one could stop him from doing it, then he used it as a way to poke her. Anyway, after goofing around for a bit, the wave now ends up in this state. In this position, I have complete control to do whatever I want, so naturally I start another slow push. So the reason I'm starting a slow push here is the same as before. It's pretty much just because I can, and no one can really stop me from doing it, and then when I crash the slow push, that'll give me a chance to do what I want. But here I look at the map, and I realise that Qiyana is trying to roam top, so I transition from a slow push into a fast push. This is because I want to crash the wave so I can deny the minions. Eventually I crash the wave and I try and zone her away from the wave because I know where she'll be coming back. And so yeah, we have a little bit of a trade here. And pretty much as you can see, I poke her down really low because I crashed the wave into tower. So yeah, pretty simple. The takeaway was I started a slow push because I could, and then I crashed it fast because I wanted to deny the minions. So at this point, I look at the wave and I realise that the minions are about even, but the wave is towards her side. What this means is the wave's going to push back into me. So rather than fighting against the wave and trying to push it, I decide to let it push into me, because the Qiyana's really low on health, and if it pushes into me and it's on my side, she'll be really vulnerable to a gank or an all-in from me. Now at this point I see the Xin invading, so I go and help the Evelynn. For some reason she decides to flash on him, and yeah, we make the mistake here of taking this fight. And basically what happens is, I kill the Qiyana and then we go 2 for 1, which sucks, because now the Xin can push the wave and crash it into tower. Pretty much what the mistake here was actually trying to take that fight. What we should have done is just try to back off and given him the Raptors, and then I would have had a freeze and the wave would have been really fucked for the Qiyana. But sadly we messed up and now the wave's in a not a great spot, but it is fixable. But pretty much the takeaway was I looked at the wave state, I saw it was pushing into me, and I let it push into me because I wanted to put the Qiyana in an awkward position. And so now the wave is going to bounce back into her, so what I decide to do when I get back to lane is I start a slow push again. And why do you think I'm doing it? Well, same as before, because I can. Crashing a wave into tower gives me a massive opening to, you know, do whatever I want. And so I just decide to go with it and let the slow push happen. And so yeah, I'm speeding it up again because there's not really much to say. I'm just last hitting the minions, pushing it slowly, trying to poke her, same as before. And now it crashes into tower. And I see a fight happening top, so I start moving to it, but then the fight ends, so I don't really get to do anything there. And then because I still have a timer, I decide to walk bot and look for some vision. And yeah, I'll just let this play out, there's not really much to say. I'm just using the timer that I created with the slow push here to, you know, get vision, take an advantage. A little bit of a fight happens here, but I see Xin on the map, so I'm forced to back off. And so once again, the takeaway is I started a slow push because I could, and then I used the timer to, you know, go get vision, do whatever I wanted. You can kind of see a pattern here, right? Where because I can, I start a slow push, and then I go do something. It's really that simple. Like, it's not that difficult to realise that, you know, you can do a slow push, so you should. And then here, I realised that the Qiyana has probably backed because she's low on health. So instead of slow pushing, I decide to fast push. The reason I go with a fast push instead of a slow push is because I want to crash it into tower as quickly as possible to get tempo and deny her minions. So basically, if you think about what's happened this game, is I've been pushing the entire time, and then I'll slow push whenever I can, and then whenever I don't have time to slow push, say there where I was trying to push the wave, or let's say if a fight was happening at Dragon or something, I would have done a fast push. So that's going to be it for this example. I'll quickly do a little summary after this, and then we'll move on to freezing. So as you saw from that game, I used slow pushes as much as possible to push the advantage I had over the Qiyana, and then when I needed to urgently do something like recall, I transitioned into fast pushing. It really is as simple as just looking at if you have enough time for a slow push, and if you do, you go for it, and if you don't, you go for a fast push. That's literally all it is. There's not much more to say about this, so let's hop into the next example and talk about freezing. So, freezing. A wave is frozen when the minions are fighting just in front of your tower, and the enemy wave is the same size as your wave, plus an additional 4 caster minions. To hold a freeze, you want to keep the wave as close to this state as possible without letting it crash into tower. So how do you know when to freeze? Well, it's actually really simple. Just ask yourself the question, do I need to push right now? If the answer is no, then just freeze. Allows you to safely farm close to your tower and forces your opponent to overextend if they want to farm, which gives you a chance to all in them or your jungler a chance to gank. So it's pretty easy to know when you should freeze. The hard part comes with actually doing it. Keeping the wave in the same state and not letting it crash can be really difficult to do, especially against champs with wave clear, and if you're weaker than the enemy laner, then it's pretty much out of the question. Once again, the only way for me to give you an idea of how to do it is through an example, so that's what I'm going to do. So in this game, I'm playing Qiyana versus Sylas. I decided to cut out the first 3 minutes of this game because nothing really happened, but I thought I'd leave the next thing in just to give some context as to where we are right now. So basically, I see my jungler close by on the map, so I decide to go for a really aggressive trade, end up losing having to flash out, but my jungler comes in clutch and cleans up the side Silas for me. I push out a few waves, take a reset, and then I come back to the lane and it's in this state. So let's look at the current state of the game. Pretty much my entire team is either dead or in base. So right now, if I were to crash a wave into tower, I wouldn't really be able to do anything meaningful. In other words, I don't need to push right now. The wave is pushing into me, I'm stronger than Silas, and Silas doesn't have very good wave clear. In other words, it's time to freeze. So as you can currently see, the red wave is bigger than the blue wave, and it's going to push into me. If I want to keep the freeze, then I need to keep the red wave around the same size, bigger than the blue wave that it is now. So what you'll see me do is if the Silas hits my wave, then I'll hit his wave, basically. Because I'm trying to keep the wave at, you know, the same ratio it is now, if that makes sense. And I'm also going to try and look for aggressive trades, because that's like the whole point of a freeze, right? It's like I take every trading opportunity I can. So like that, as you saw there, I went in for a trade, and I'm just going to keep letting it push into me. That's all I'm going to do here. And if the Silas walks up to try and clear it, I'm going to zone him off. So currently the red wave is 3 caster minions bigger than my wave. Pretty much 3, and I want to kind of keep it at around that size. So I'm only going to go for last hits right now. And the Silas just used his Q on the wave, so now it's going to push into me faster, and I need to start thinning it a bit. You see what I'm doing here? I'm just kind of keeping the red wave the same amount bigger than the blue wave, you know, consistently. Like the ratio is more or less staying the same. And then right there again, I go for a trade. And you need to remember the whole point of having a freeze to begin with is so that you can play aggressive. So when the Silas walks up, I go for a trade. That's the whole point of the freeze to begin with. And I want to keep the ratio the same. That's all I'm doing. And now I have ult, so I'm going to look for much more aggressive trades. And you'll see the wave is just not moving, right? Like it's staying in one place. And if it gets too big, then I'm just gonna thin it out. And right here, it's about to crash, so I have to tank it. And you'll have to do this a lot when you're freezing. You have to like tank it to stop it from crashing. That's fine. Just keep doing that. Let that happen. Pretty much what you want to do is keep the red wave bigger than the blue wave and not let it crash. And you know, I whiffed my ult there like an idiot. Kane comes, and then here, the Kane comes and do I die? I think I die here. Yeah, I actually die here, so that was kind of my bad. But I should have just survived that, and the Kane should have broke the freeze. So I want to quickly talk about breaking the freeze. So what's going to happen when you freeze is the enemy jungler is going to come sometimes and try and break the freeze for your laner, as the Kane just tried to do there. When that happens, that's completely fine. That is what should happen. If the enemy jungler comes to your lane and breaks the freeze, that means you're wasting the enemy jungler's time and drawing pressure to your own lane, so your other lanes can play safe, or can play more aggressive, sorry. And so now I can come back to lane, and because the Silas didn't clear it quick enough, I can actually set up a freeze again, which is why I'm using this example here, because the Silas kind of trolled and he should have crashed the wave. But now I can set up another freeze. And now I'm just going to keep it here again. Same again, keep the same minion ratio, don't let it crash, and go for aggressive trades. That's pretty much all I'm doing. So I'm gonna speed this bit up actually and wait till Silas gets back. So now the Silas is back, we're pretty much just going to go into the same routine as before. Another trade like that, keep the wave in the same position, and keep the ratio the same. So what you'll see in a sec here is the thing I was describing before, where the Kane will come and break it. And I actually have to burn my flash there, because, yeah, bad position. Go for some more aggressive trades. Barely survived there, actually. And the wave is still frozen, because they didn't really properly reset it, and the Silas decided to try and push it again. So now I can just freeze again, and keep the freeze going. And so now my objective here is to either kill him with this freeze, or get my jungler to come. And if that happens, you know, the Silas is screwed. Like, if you look in the top left right now, you'll see this guy is 26 CS down right now. So he's losing pretty badly. So with a kill, this game would just be pretty much over. And that's like the advantage of freezing. You can just create massive CS leads. And Silas is actually a really good champion to freeze against, because you'll see he has to keep using his Q to clear the wave, or like take CS, which actually pushes it. So, you know, if he wants to take last hits, he has to push it, which just keeps it frozen. I go in there and I miss my second Q. I should have been more patient, that was my bad. But yeah, now we keep the freeze going. I actually see Kane over there. He clears the ward, and yeah, I don't know. Just gives me a free kill. I'm not really sure what that was. Probably going to speed this up again here until Silas is back, because he's recalling. So he gets back, Wave's still frozen. He has to clear it, which he should be able to easily do since I'm weakening him now. But my jungler is close by, so I ping my jungler to come kill him. This should be a free kill. All that needs to happen is Warwick presses R, I press R, the Silas dies. So you'll see that will probably be what happens. Just kidding, by the way. That doesn't happen because solo queue sucks and the Warwick doesn't want to press R. So, you know, he doesn't press R, doesn't press R, doesn't press R. And then he ruins it completely and I die. It obviously sucks that this happened, but, you know, even though this happened and we kind of fucked up, you still see the point, right? Like, the freeze got me a massive CS lead. It should have got me a kill as well, but then we messed it up. So yeah, even though this ended up happening and it, you know, kind of, the game went south, the freeze was still really, really good, and yeah, we still built up a massive lead, and it should have been an even bigger lead, so you sort of see what I meant. So I'm going to end the example here. Nothing really happens after this. So yeah. So that's about it for the freeze example. The main takeaway is that as long as you know that you don't need to push and that the enemy can't break a freeze if you set one up, you can just go ahead and freeze. So let's summarize the whole application section. Firstly, know when to push. If you need to push, decide between a slow push or a fast push. Use a slow push if you have nowhere to be urgently, otherwise use a fast push. If you don't need to push and you're able to set up a freeze, then set up a freeze. The timestamps for each section are on screen if you need to go over any of them again. You might have noticed that I didn't talk about mid-game or late-game wave management in this video. That's because it's almost impossible to do it well in solo queue, since the moment you decide to set up a freeze in the mid-game or late game, your team will just go for a 4v5 and throw the game. Every time, trust me man. Basically, don't bother with it. It's only going to screw you over. It's pretty much no different from the early game stuff anyway. If you're interested in getting free coaching or finding people to 1v1 to get better at the game quickly, hop in my Discord because we got all that. Also, if you could subscribe to the channel and like the video, that would be sick. These videos take about 30 hours to make each, so I could definitely use some more encouragement. Hope you enjoyed it though, and thanks for watching. In a bit.